Did ya? Okay. So what I thought I'd do is go page by page through it. We'll do that today. See where we end up. See how much of the stuff you guys have gotten together and did with this. Then we will, on Wednesday, continue doing whatever we need to do with reviews. Okay. Now your review is set up in two parts. You've got your paper copy, and your paper copy is worth 10 points of homework points. So make sure you get that done. I have to enter it. So you're going to see some things pop up in your Hawk stuff that you won't get anything when you click on it, because that's where grades get put. So pay attention to that. But then there is a Hawks review also, and that has the similar type of questions, but your numbers will change. And that's also worth 10 points of extra credit. It's like your practice tests that you would do on your own. The ones you did on your own were 5 points, and this one's 10 points. And so you'd have that to do too. And so we're just going to try to go through this and see what we can end up doing with some of these questions. Yes? How many points is the final? The final exams were 200 points. It has 40 questions on it. So there's 8 theme type areas within it, and so there's 40 questions, but it's 200 points. So you need to make sure that you study for it. And the questions that are in the packet, there are approximately about 3 questions for every question that you have on your final. And they're all similar, because if you start looking at some of these, they end up being the same kind of things. Like if you look at these 2 exponent pieces up here, those are similar type things. And so you're going to have something with exponents. There you go. Okay. And so that's kind of the stuff that we got to take a look at. So you think you're okay with exponents? Think you can do those too? Be careful with this one. Put a star next to it, because your answer in this thing is going to be, of course, negative. The 3 only applies to the base of 3. So you're taking 3 and raising it to the 3rd power and getting 27. But it's a -1 out in front, so be careful with that one. Hint, hint, you'll see something like that on your exam that's coming up next week. So that's that piece. Then if you look at these next ones, we got order of operations stuff in here. And order of operation and solving those. We okay there? What do you think? I know you probably haven't had a chance to really work on this maybe. Or would today be more beneficial for you guys just to go through and work on this? Well, I don't know, you guys could work on it for maybe an hour, and then we'll come back and see what we can do with it. If you want to do that, does that sound like a plan? Because we can put this on hold, because I'd rather have you figure out what you had questions on than me to try to go through and tell you what you got questions on with it. So I don't know. Would that be more beneficial? And you can work in pairs if you want. It's a talk it over and do whatever you want. Do you think that's a good idea? Yours almost done? Okay. All right. Well, then maybe we should just keep going through here. And maybe for the first hour, we'll just go through and I will highlight stuff in here, and then have the last hour to maybe work on it on your own. How's that sound? Okay. We'll do that then. These 2 are order of operations. So when you do order of operations, we had, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And when we had this, what did it mean? Well, we meant do parentheses first, do exponents next, multiplication and division, my dear, left to right, whichever comes first, adding and subtracting, left to right, whichever comes first there too. So that's what we kind of do with these 2. So what that means is, of course, there's going to be some order of operations type problems on your test as well. So then, if we keep going here, we end up with, so these two fit that category. These in here are distribution, so it's simplify and combine stuff. We kind of did that in this last chapter, in chapter 6. We worked with those, so that's what that piece does. This part down here is evaluate. So what does evaluate mean? And what did we do with those? We replaced x with 4 and replaced y with 3. And so we get 6 times 4 squared minus 2 times 3 squared minus 1. And then you would solve it using order of operations from there. So those you need to put your stuff in place and work on that. And then number 9, solve the linear equation using equivalent equations to isolate a variable. So all we're doing here is we're just solving for u. So that means I need to add 11 to both sides and find out u is equal to 15. Okay? So some of this stuff is just the general solving of different problems. Decimals involved, you're still solving for z, so you're still combining and putting stuff together in there. Down here, we're still solving for x, so we got to get stuff together on one side. And then in here is a distribution that we need to do. What do you think? So that was chapter 1. Chapter 1 was kind of a review of some of your basic algebra skills along with some of your mathematical stuff. So in that chapter, if we look at, I think I might have one in here, our basic algebra themes. If we're looking at themes, these are the exam themes that we're going to run across. So in order of operations, there's 5 questions right there. So just that first piece that we did, we have that part happening in there. And so we've got 5 questions out of just that. So just order of operations. So order of operations and exponents and that type of thing is your first 5 questions. Algebraic expressions, that's also in chapter 1. So there are another 5 questions out of that part. So what we just accomplished here, what we went through with chapter 1 is your first 10 questions of your exam, okay? So if you're careful and take your time with it, that should work out pretty good of getting through and doing those and coming up with what their answers are. Then we go to solving equations, the next group, that's out of chapter 2. So in chapter 2, we end up with some story problems in here because chapter 2 has a lot of that type of stuff in it. We did lots of story problems in chapter 2. So probably out of all the chapters, we had the most in chapter 2. So set up the following equation. So if we have 34 times a number minus 61 is equal to a negative 83 less than the number. So what does that mean? So if I first have to write out my equation, what would I end up writing? So what would my equation be for this one? I'm saying, wait a minute here. I'm like, yours must be down here, right? What did you have for that one? Josh, what did you have for this? Yeah, I know. He's got me going all over. So, okay, so 34x minus 61 is equal to... Oh, yep, they do say y. Okay, well, we'll put y in there. 34y minus 61 equals y plus 83. Because it originally was y minus a negative 83, but we fixed it, right? Yep, so we're good. Okay, so we are good to go there. All right. So that ends up becoming our good stuff going on there. Okay. So that's what happens with that one. And then the next one says solve it. So I think you guys are good there, right? because you just move your y over, move your 61 over, and you'll have what your y happens to be with that one. And then what'd you have, Josh, on the second one, number 14? It says a number divided by 4, and we're using y again. Yep.
Yep, y over 4 plus 69.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yep. Okay. And then you just go through and do your pieces with those to see what you get. And then we got consecutive integers. Consecutive even integers. Consecutive means they're in order. So how do I find those? It's been a while since we did consecutive stuff. So how do we locate this stuff? So consecutive means they're in order. So if you can't remember what your formulas are, just put 3 consecutive numbers, such as 1, 2, 3, and how do I get from one to the other? If I knew the first one is x, how do I get to 2? X plus 1. How do I get to 3? Yes. And so it says the sum of 3, so that means I need to take all these and add them together. X plus 1 plus x plus 2 is going to equal a negative 87. And then you solve it from there. But you're not done, because you still have to go back and figure out what your numbers are. So what your 3 values would end up being with that. So you want to make sure you go back and do that part. And then sum of 3 consecutive even integers. So then just, again, if you can't remember what they are, come up with some even integers. 2, 4, 6, 3 consecutive even integers. So if the first is x, what must the second one be? So how do I get from 2 to a 4? Plus 2. How do I get from 2 to a 6? And that would be your consecutive even integers. So if we read this one, it's going to be x plus 2 plus x plus 4 is going to equal a negative 240. Okay, so that would be my piece. Okay, you're not okay. All right, we good or not good with that page? Okay, so again, it's just going through and basically figuring out what in the world it's asking you to do. The next one, let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit. It seems kind of small. I don't want to get it so enlarged that I can't fit it on the page either. Okay, so we're fitting. So 17, and then we got to focus. A little better, maybe. So it says the sum of 3 angles on a triangle is 180. 2 angles of the triangle measure 12 degrees and 74 degrees. What is the measure of the third angle? So describe the above situation in the linear using x or y for the variables to describe the unknown quantities. So what would I put there?
12 degrees plus 74 degrees plus x, 180.
Yep. And then you're going to solve for your unknown. And I think you can do that on your own. I think you're good there. Your answers are in the back. So if you get through and do some stuff and you want to go back and check them, your answers are, there's an answer key at the back. So make sure you remember to go back and do that. And then 18, the distance to a boat ramp less the distance Chris has already traveled is 10 miles. If the distance to the boat ramp is 42 miles, how many miles has Chris already traveled? So what would we put for that one? Using x or y, so we got to come up with what our variables and what our stuff would be. So what do you think happens with that one? Yep, 42 minus x equals 10, and that one's pretty easy to figure out. And so we minus 42, and we get negative 32, so x is going to be 32. So that's how far he's traveled so far. Okay. And then 19, in a two-candidate election, Anita receives 5 times as many votes as Robert. If the total is 36, how many votes did Robert receive? So, describe the above situation using x and y as the variables and describe the unknown. So what would I put for this one? 5 times as many votes. X plus 5x. Yep. So Robert is x, Anita is 5x, and so we got what we need there. Okay, leave that one to you guys to solve too. And 20 says price of a meal plus 11% delivery charge is a total of $19.98. What was the price of the meal? Describe the above situation using x or y to describe the unknown. So what was this one going to look like? So what don't we know? We have no clue on the price of the meal, right? And this is being added, so we need 11% of what that meal happens to be, and that's going to equal $19.98. Okay, we good on seeing that one too? That one's a little more complicated than maybe what the other ones were. Okay. So what do you think? You want to try the rest of these on your own? See what you can do with them? Yes.
23.
Okay.
And because I'm lost this to probably 5,441 being a tax. Property taxes on both were 5,441.
Mm-hmm.
Tax rate for both is valued at. So the taxes, that 5,441 goes to that 265,000.
Mm-hmm. Because you're going to multiply this price of the boat by the tax rate. So X is going to be your tax rate. So you're going to have 265,000 times X, because I don't know what my rate is, and that's going to equal 5,441. Okay, so then when you take that 5,441, divide it by the 265,000, you're going to get that. Okay, but you got to round it to the round to the nearest hundredth of a percent. So when I back it up to, I still got to back it up. I backed it up 2, so I get 2.05. The 3 is not going to change the 5, so your answer is 2.05%. Okay? Because I got to turn it to a percent first. Okay? Then once it's to a percent, then I need to look at the 5, and the 3 is not going to change it. Okay? So that's the important part there, that you got to watch that one little glitch in there. Okay? So what do you think? You want to try these for a little bit, and then we'll come back and see how well you did on those. I think we're catching on to the other ones, so they shouldn't be too awfully bad. Okay, and then chapter 3. Chapter 3 kind of got into geometry. It got into doing some solving for a letter. So that's what this is asking you to do. So you think you can get your letter by itself in there? So can you solve for R? How would I solve for R? What would I have to do to that? I've got I equals PRT. If I want to solve for R, I would need to do what? You guys think? How can I get it solved? Divide by. Divide by PT. And so I would find out that I is equal to PT, and that's going to be equal to R. Okay, and so that's how I get R by itself within that one. Okay, all right, then we get to geometry back here. And in geometry, and again, back to our little chart here that says what our problems are going to be like. In chapter 3, we've got story problem stuff in there. So chapter 3 is kind of going in this application piece in there with that. So that's where that one happens to hit. So then, the top one, can you solve for x? We've been doing these for a little while. Think you can get x all by itself? So how do you get x alone? Add 9y. Mm-hmm. But remember, we can't put a negative in the denominator. So what that means is they all change. So negative 9y minus 14 all over 4. Yeah, so get that negative out of your denominator so that it's not there and it's not part of that piece. Okay. And then we did things like this part. It says find the volume of a right cylinder cone with a radius of 13 inches and a height of 14. Take the values of 3.14 for pi. It says round your answer to the nearest thousandth. So we needed a formula here, and our formula is pi r squared times the height, but we need to divide that by 3 because it's a cone. Okay, cones are only a third of a cylinder, and so you got to divide by 3 in there with those. If you were to have one like this on your exam, it will end up probably having this formula for you because it's not an area one. If it doesn't, I guess I'd let you know what that would be. So just plug in all your pieces. So 3.14 times my radius, which is 13 squared, times my height, which is 14, and you would have your answer to that one. Okay, and what it would end up being with those. When you're doing your practice in Hawks, the practice test that's in Hawks itself, the practice exam, if you follow the numbers of these questions, you will have it pertaining to each chapter. So like chapter 3 started on problem 26, and if we keep going, you'll find out that it ends over here at number 37. So there's some pieces there of coming up with what we end up having with those pieces. So it'll still be the same numbers within your practice one that's in Hawks. So if you say, I just need to concentrate on chapter 3, just go to that section in your practice one. You can do it as many times as you want. You don't have to just go through and do the whole thing. So it's going to show up in my grade book as saying you've been in your practice test 5 times, okay? And it will show that you did some work in there, so you'll still get your extra credit points, a 10 for that. So just hop around in that part. So what about this next one? It says find the area of the parallelogram with a base of 13.5 and a height of 9.3. So we got a good idea on that one, do you think? And what we do need to do with it? So the area is base times height, or length times width. You can use the same thing with that. So basically it's only 13.5 times 9.3, and you will be good to go with that one. And 30 is a story problem, because we had more story problems in that chapter as well. And this one is a distance, distance equals rate times time. What do you want to do with the Chandlers? So some of these, drawing pictures is a really good idea. So we can have Mr. and we can have Mrs. And we need rate, we need time, and we need something with distance. So how fast is Mr. Chandler driving? How fast is Mrs. Chandler driving? 70. Okay. How much time is involved with all of this? 3.5. He left 3.5 hours before her, right? How long has she been on the road? X. Okay. But has he only been on the road 3.5 hours? Plus X. We need to put the plus X in there because he's still going to travel that amount of time. And what we're looking for is where she catches up with him. So if she catches up with him right there, what do we know about their distance in this case? How far have they traveled? Same. So if they've traveled the same, then we have an equals between the two. So 45 times 3.5 plus X is equal to 70X. And then we can solve it from there and see what we get for an answer. So 45 times 3.5 gives me 157.5. 45 times X is 45X. Minus the 45X. Take 157.5. Divide it by 25. X is going to equal 6.3 hours. Is that my answer? Is that what I needed? If he averages 45, how long will it take Mrs. Chandler to overtake him? Yes, that would be my answer. So 6.3 hours. She would be on the road to catch up with him. Okay? All right? Okay with that one, you think? Okay. And then the back gets into all of the inequality stuff that we had. Because we had inequality problems in chapter 3. Had quite a few of them actually that we had to do in there. And these, of course, involved, I'm going to leave 31 for you. That's another story problem. So we're going to leave that one and let you guys work on it. And then on Wednesday, we'll pick up any of these that you still have questions on. Or actually in class, we can pick up some of those because you'll have some time to work on that. Because we're going to only do chapters 1 through 3 today, and then we will pick up 4 through 6 on Wednesday. Okay, so we have enough time to practice on reviewing those. Okay, so number 32, just to review what we need to do with these, it says solve the linear inequality above by the given variable. Simplify your solution by using algebraic notation. So we just have to divide negative 24 by 3. And we find z is greater than a negative 8. So that is what happens with that piece. Then it says graph the solution. So what would our solution be graphed? So we know we're at a negative 8. And we know we're going to go this direction. So what would I have to put above the 8, the negative 8? A parenthesis. Yep. Parenthesis, because it's not included. Okay, so it keeps going. The other thing we had to do with these, and might as well do it right now as well, is interval notation. And in interval notation, since it's heading out here to positive infinity, my interval notation is going to be from a negative 8 to a positive infinity, and it's going to be in straight parentheses because there is no equals with that one. Okay, so if you had to do interval, that's what would happen with that piece. These examples, I know I just had chapter 2 on here, but they're going to show up in the solving equations piece because they are solving equations, and that's where we ended up sticking those in your exam for you. Okay, can you do this one, you think? Think you're good there? Okay. Be careful when you've got a negative out in front of your variable because it's going to change your sign or change your symbol that's in here. And your symbol would flip when you do that division. So maybe we better finish that one out. We'll walk through this one just so you have one that's a review piece. So I'm going to have to add 3. When I divide by that negative 3, my inequality switches. So don't forget to switch it. So a negative 18 divided by 3 is a negative 6. So I have x is greater than or equal to a negative 6 in that location. Okay? And when I graph it, because it's got an equals, what does that tell me? I need a, what, above it. So negative 6, we're going to head off to infinity because that's the direction it tells me to go in. An equals, so what's above negative 6? I have big choices, parentheses or bracket? Bracket, yep. A bracket goes above there. So if we had to write this in interval notation, what would happen? So if I wrote it in interval notation, I would have to go back through and from a negative infinity to a negative 6, but I can include the negative 6, so I get a parenthesis bracket combination for that one. So you want to make sure that you get those pieces in there. Okay? That makes sense? Okay. Then we'll leave these next ones. These are pretty much the exact same as the ones we just did, so they're not really any difference. It's just this one you got to distribute, and that's in number 36. So make sure you distribute it so you get your pieces together in there. Okay, and then back here I think we got one more at the back, and that one also you need to distribute. But this one's a double. Notice it's in the center. So if it's in the middle piece, and let's review that one. We'll take it over here on the side. Negative 10 is less than 2z plus 4 is less than 18. So to do this, I need to take 4 away from all ends, middle and both ends when you do that one. Negative 10 and negative 14 is a negative 4 is a negative 14. 4s are gone in the middle, and 18 minus 4 is plus 14. Then when you remove your middle, you're going to divide by 2. And when I do that, I'm going to find out that negative 7 is less than z, and at the same time, z is less than 7. And so when we graph this, or when you put your algebraic statement up here, negative 7 is less than z is less than 7. To graph it, I need to write it twice. So z is greater than a negative 7 at the same time z is less than 7. Remember when we did that? We broke stuff apart, so we came up with our pieces. So then what happens in here? I'm at a negative 7, heading this way with a parenthesis, and then I'm down here at 7, heading the opposite direction with the parenthesis. So if I needed to do this graphing, it would be parenthesis and a parenthesis, negative 7 to 7, okay? And interval notation will also be negative 7 to 7, but parentheses around both, because there's no equals in my problem, okay? That makes sense? So the only piece I put in is that piece. So I get that middle section in there. And so that's what gets put in place with that one. Okay? All right or not all right? What do you think? Okay, good. Okay, so that gets us to chapter 3 with our stuff in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this. You guys can work on, see if you can get the rest of these done. Okay? Or go into Hawks and do problems 1 through 37 in there, and that will still get you to that exact same location with chapter 3 stuff. So your Hawks stuff or this stuff is there. So whatever you decide to do, I mean, this can go with you anywhere. If you want to work on your Hawks piece, that's getting you extra credit points. This you have to do, okay? But if you want to take that time today and just go into the regular Hawks and work on it, great. And I'll wander around and help you with whatever you need questions answered on. Okay?